Hello everyone, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney also licensed in California and Texas. And today we're going to be talking about what are my chances of recovering losses upon filing a lawsuit in Brazil. So the first thing we need to discuss is about how strong your case is. And of course, naturally, whenever we have a new client, the new client is going to focus on everything that was done wrong by the potential defendant, and that's where most of the time and energy is usually spent at the beginning. However, it's very common for when the lawsuit is filed and when we see the defendant's response to very often find out things that our client never told us at the inception. So if you are considering a lawsuit in Brazil, your chances of recovery are going to be better assessed if you disclose not only, like the upsides of your position, but also the downsides. Let's say, have you made representations that could be damaging to your case? Have you followed all the local rules that we have in Brazil, for instance, for invoices to become enforceable, and so on? Second, we also have the statute of limitations in Brazil, just like in other countries. Once there is a potential claim, meaning that one of the parties have not fulfilled their obligations, the other party is going to have a specific time window to file a lawsuit. And this is the same across the countries, but the timeline is going to be different on a country-by-country basis. So in Brazil, you're going to have some issues that are going to allow you a single year to file, while others are going to give you 2, 3 years, or even 5 years, right? Now, the challenge here is, many people, they wait until the last minute to start the process of filing a lawsuit, and you cannot file a lawsuit overnight. Naturally, there is a lot of work that should be spent by the attorneys, by the client as well, by the client's personnel, in terms of preparing evidence, in terms of preparing the original petition, making your case as strong as possible from the get-go. Another concern about the timeline is not only about the statute of limitations, and of course, if you miss the timeline allowed by the statute of limitations, basically you cannot even file a claim. Of course, you should have an attorney or a law firm reviewing your case to make such assessment on your behalf. But another interesting aspect of the timeline of filing a claim is that the sooner you file something, or the sooner you go after a non-performing party in Brazil, the higher the chances of recovery. And naturally, let's just think about international trade. If you have a non-performer supplier in Brazil, for instance, if you wait too much, if you wait for a year, a couple of years, by the time you're filing a claim, guess what? Maybe this provider is no longer financially viable, meaning that they could be in process of filing, for bankruptcy, or maybe all the other creditors that came before you, naturally, they are gonna have like a preference in terms of collecting the debtor's assets because they have filed their claims before you. Something similar is going to be discussed in the enforcement of the judgment, saying that, let's say, if you file a lawsuit, you go through the lawsuit, and eventually you have a win, meaning you have a positive judgment allowing you to recover from the debtor, from the defendant. You also need to make sure that at that time, the defendant is going to be financially viable with assets for you to recover. It does not, bring you any good to have a win if the defendant is no longer viable, if they are bankrupt at the time that you get your judgment. And therefore, it's also important for your attorney or law firm to consider at the inception of the lawsuit position in which the defendant is at that time. Sometimes it may be better for a client to recover even like, part of the losses through some type of settlement agreement instead of going all the way with the lawsuit, because you can tell from the get-go that the defendant will most probably not be viable at the end of a full-fledged lawsuit. Talking about settlement, there is also the settlement effect. That's something that we discuss here at the firm as the increase in the chances of securing a good settlement when you file a lawsuit. Many clients, they say, well, I don't really want to file a lawsuit. I want you to try to negotiate. Maybe we're going to be able to get a settlement. But in our experience, Brazilian counterparties, meaning the potential defendant, they are going to see our clients as too far away from Brazil to represent danger. And even when we are retained by a client from abroad, and the client says, listen, I'm going to retain you just to try a settlement, but I don't want to, consider the lawsuit because of the costs, because of the timeline, because maybe of, the disclosure that I'm going to need to do in terms of my patents and this kind of stuff. Now, one strategy we have here at the firm is that when we file a lawsuit, even if we are not really targeting a long-term lawsuit, the lawsuit by itself is going to have this so-called settlement effect, meaning that this is going to put maximum pressure on the defendant to get into a proper settlement. So in conclusion, if you have, the facts on your side, chances of recovering in Brazil are substantially good. And of course, this is going to be better assessed, again, when you look at the particular defendant in your case, and when you also consider other approaches, not necessarily litigating all the way through the end, but maybe using the litigation as maximum pressure to bring a defendant to the table and get a settlement that's going to be at your satisfaction. I hope this video was helpful. Don't forget to download our ebook, The 7 Things You Must Know When Handling Disputes in Brazil, and see you in our next video.